I want to write to you about the crows on your roof. Not the single crow that sometimes shows up at dawn and makes a few calls before moving on. The other thing, the morning or the afternoon, when you looked up and there were 5 of them, maybe 7, lined along your ridge or clustered around your chimney, all facing roughly the same direction, all quiet in the way crows are quiet when they are paying attention to something. You probably stood there for a moment longer than you needed to. You probably wondered, briefly, whether you should be unsettled by it. The encounter has been sitting in a particular place in your mind, somewhere between curiosity and a small unease, and the letter I want to write to you today is meant to give you a better frame for it than the one you have probably been carrying around. The first thing worth saying is that what you saw is different in kind from what you may have seen before. A single crow on a roof is doing something close to routine. A small group of crows on your roof, all turned in a similar direction, all watching something you cannot immediately see, is doing something else entirely. It is worth separating the two before going any further, because the assumption that puts people into the wrong frame is assuming they are variants of the same behavior. They are not. The thing you have probably been holding, if a guess is allowed here, is the assumption that the gathering meant something about you, about your house, about something happening at your address that the birds had registered. That read is the one most of us reach for, partly because we live in our houses and the roof felt like an arrival point. But that frame tends to mislead, and I would ask you to set it down gently. What you witnessed was almost certainly not about you, your house, or anything happening on your property in particular. It was about your roof, which is a different statement than it sounds. Here's the part worth sitting with for a moment. Your roof, from a crow's perspective, is not your roof. It is a high, flat, or pitched surface with clean sightlines in multiple directions raised above the visual clutter of the ground. It is, in functional terms, an observation platform. The fact that it sits on top of your house is, to the bird, incidental. The roof has been selected because it offers what the crows needed in that moment: elevation, visibility, the ability to see something that mattered to them, from a vantage point that matters very little to you. So, the first question worth asking, when you find them on your roof again, is not what about your house drew them. It is what were they looking at. That is where the encounter actually points. There is a researcher whose work has shaped how I think about gatherings of this kind, John Marzluff, at the University of Washington. His work, alongside what Kaeli Swift has written more recently, gives us a reasonably reliable framework for thinking about why a group of crows would gather on an elevated surface and focus their attention in one direction. The framework is not a single answer. It is a set of possibilities, and your task, if you are going to read the gathering, is to figure out which of them fits. Let me walk through the most likely ones. The first, and probably the most common, is what is called mobbing behavior, or the prelude to it. Crows gather, sometimes calling, sometimes silent, when they have detected a predator at rest. The predator is usually a hawk or an owl, occasionally a cat, sometimes a raccoon dozing on a branch. The crows are not attacking from your roof. They are assessing. They have located the threat, they have called nearby crows to confirm and reinforce the assessment, and they are watching it. If the predator moves, the situation changes. If the predator stays still, the crows may stay too. This kind of gathering can be remarkably calm from the outside. It does not always come with noise. Sometimes it comes with stillness. A row of quiet crows, all facing the same tree, all waiting. The second possibility is a food event. Crows are deeply attentive to food availability across their territories, and they communicate it. If one bird discovers something valuable, a torn trash bag, a road-killed squirrel, the spillage from a delivery truck, a feeder a neighbor refilled overnight, others may converge. The roof becomes the staging area. They wait there. They assess the safety of the food source. They sometimes call additional birds in. The food itself is rarely visible from where you stand looking up. It is the gathering that is visible. The third is what is sometimes called social recruitment, which covers more than feeding. Crows live in extended family groups, and members of those groups coordinate activity in ways that do not always correspond to a clear external trigger. A gathering on your roof can sometimes be a family-level meeting point, a place where members are converging before moving somewhere else together. It looks like deliberation, and in a way it is, though we should be careful about how much intention we read into it. What can be said with reasonable confidence is that crows do not gather randomly. The gathering has a reason, even when the reason is not one we can identify from the outside. The fourth is territorial conflict. If your roof sits on a boundary between two crow family territories, you may occasionally see a gathering that is actually a confrontation, birds from one group lining the ridge, while birds from another perch on a nearby tree or roof. The energy is different. It is more vocal, more agitated, more sustained in a particular direction. If you have ever witnessed it, you probably knew what you were watching, even without having a name for it. The fifth, and the one worth keeping at the back of your mind, without putting at the front, is that your roof has simply become a useful temporary perch. Crows learn their territories at a level of detail most of us tend to underestimate. They know which roofs offer the best sightlines toward the bus stop, where children sometimes drop snacks, toward the bird feeder 2 yards over, toward the alley where the restaurant takes its trash out at a predictable hour. Your roof may sit in their working memory as a good place to wait for events they expect. I want to come back to something practical here, because I think it is where the encounter becomes useful to you instead of merely interesting. The next time you find crows gathered on your roof, look at the direction they are facing. This is the single most useful observation available to you. Crows watching something will all orient roughly the same way. Their heads will turn in unison toward a particular point, usually a tree, sometimes a chimney, occasionally a specific window or rooftop in the middle distance. Follow that line. Whatever they are looking at is the answer to what they are doing. If it is a tree, scan the interior branches for an owl or a roosting hawk. If it is an alley, look for activity at ground level. If it is a yard, check whether something has changed there in the last hour. The other thing worth watching is when they leave. The departure tells you almost as much as the gathering. If they leave in a coordinated burst, often with calls, often toward a single point, something has shifted. The predator moved, the food appeared, the threat resolved. If they leave gradually, peeling off 1 or 2 at a time over 15 or 20 minutes, the situation was probably less acute. They were watching, and the watching ran its course. One more thing before this letter closes. The instinct, when you have witnessed a gathering, is sometimes to look for repetition, to wonder whether it will happen again, whether your roof has been marked, whether you will start seeing them more often. Sometimes you will. Crows return to perches that proved useful. If your roof gave them what they needed once, it may give them what they need again. But the gathering itself was not a beginning of anything. It was an event that used your roof. The relationship, such as it is between the crows and the landscape they are reading. Your house is part of that landscape. That is the whole of it. I'll close with this. The encounter you had, the moment of looking up and seeing 5 or 7 crows on your ridge, all quiet, all facing the same way, was not strange in the way you may have first registered it. It was, in fact, one of the more legible behaviors crows engage in, if you know how to read it. They had located something. They were watching it. Your roof was the vantage point. The next time it happens, and it may, try something small. Do not try to make them leave. Do not try to make them stay. Just follow their attention. Look where they are looking. The answer to what they are doing will almost always be somewhere in the direction they are facing, and finding it, the still hawk in the tree, the open trash bag in the alley, the disturbance you would not have noticed without the birds drawing your eye to it, is the small reward of having paid attention to them in the first place. They were paying attention to something. You can, in a small way, borrow theirs.